Saturday. Christmas comes early.
Unbelievable! Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone!
Chargers.
It's a touchdown!
An exclusive NFL game.
That's fantastic!
Live in primetime.
Wow!
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans. They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pod Mavericks After Dark. This is Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe. You're joining us. Let's see, we're recording and we're going live, but as you can see, there's nobody here yet on the live stream. It's about 8:30 on October 17th. It's a Tuesday, and it has been a week since you and I had talked. We had planned to talk during the Real Madrid game. But like a series, actually, no, we didn't, because I was taking a vacation. A series of life events happened, and that's why Josh and I, or Doyle and I, recorded. And my favorite was I got an email from somebody who was like, "That Doyle guy is a casual. He doesn't know anything about the Mavs." And I was like, I just like was dying laughing. So I'm like, Doyle's been a fan of the team for like 40 years, and no, he's not a casual. He just like wasn't prepared to podcast and was doing me a solid. Anyway, Josh, how are you?
I'm here, which I think is a big deal. For our listeners, I don't know how much TMI I'm going to go into, but so like right around, I think, halftime of the Real, so that was literally a week from today. So right around halftime, my lower back went on fire, the left side of my lower back. And at first I was like, okay, it's just back pain. Going to put some icy hot on it, take some ibuprofen. And shockingly, it did not go away. And it became so excruciating that I'm like literally, I'm sweating. I'm in tears. I can't move. I can't sit. Nothing feels comfortable. We have one car at our house. We're a one-car family because I work from home and my wife kind of splits work from home and office. She's at the office, of course. Today's an office day for her. Last week, have to call her. I don't want to pay for an ambulance. I'm texting her. I have to go to the ER.
That's the correct call, by the way. You don't want to pay for an ambulance.
So I go to the hospital. I'm in the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And of course, if I'm sure listeners can probably deduce, I had a kidney stone. I know I posted about it on Twitter.
We are old as fuck.
Huh?
We are old.
I know. It was awful. The doctor came in after I got my CT scan and he was like, "Congratulations, you just experienced the closest thing a male can experience that's equivalent to childbirth." And I was like, holy shit. I was like, that makes sense. And it was a comedy of errors because I didn't tell you this. We're just story time with Josh before we start talking about basketball. But so I'm in the hospital room and I'm dying. Like I can't walk. Like the pain is so excruciating. I can't sit down because that makes it worse. But when I'm standing up, it's also bad. Like it's bad. Like there's no way I can get comfortable. And if anyone's had a kidney stone, they can relate to that. Yeah, chat saying I was born in 1989. So yeah, 34.
Yeah, I was right.
Math is right. There you go. So, and what sucks is I have deep veins. So the only way I can get relief is if they stick me with an IV and get the morphine and get the drugs in. And there are 3 nurses surrounding my arm trying to find a vein while I am sweating. My back is spasming because the pain is so great. I'm trying to be applied as I can, but I'm just telling these nurses, like, I can't do this. I'm in pain. Like, we got to get this going. And they're like, we can't do anything until we get the IV in. Right. And then finally they do. And once the drugs came in, it was instant relief. And doctor came in and confirmed the kidney stone. And the thing about the kidney stone is like, they got the drugs and I felt better. I didn't, this is now TMI, but I didn't pass it till about 2 days ago. So thankfully the pain went away. But when
like 90% of our viewership and listenership is men, and like this is not an uncommon thing. Like a third of our staff has had this happen to them. Basically, is what I found out in the intermeeting days. And it's like, oh my god!
And the worst part, so like the pain, the intense pain comes from when it's going to your kidney, from the kidney to your bladder. Once it's in your bladder, it doesn't hurt anymore. But so the pain was gone. Well, I still had pain because my back was like, the pain was so bad, like my kidney was inflamed. And then when you have that much pain, like guess what? There's all your back muscles are around your kidney. So my back hurt, like because my back was sore. And then the worst part is, so once it gets in your bladder, the stone, it puts pressure on your bladder. So I felt like I had to pee 24/7, even after I peed. I'm sorry, TMI. But like I would go to the bathroom, go number one, and then like I still had that sensation.
Oh my god!
It's horrible. So I'm drinking like I can't imagine how much water I've drank since Tuesday. Probably like over a gallon a day. Finally passed it a couple days ago, and it was like instant relief. Like it was like it went away.
We have multiple people in the chat chiming in that they have had this happen to them. So and I've learned a lot, but it was and life happens, and like I don't know if you guys like at this point last year. I was sounding like I smoked 4 packs a day. I was listening to an old show from last year, just kind of get a tune of what we were talking about. And it's like, just doing this stuff on the side for fun. The fact that we build all these things in and are still able to do it around life is really funny when we're done. Like at the time, it's like, oh, it's fine. We'll just fit this in. And then I look back and I'm like, how do we do all these things? So you're a real trooper for passing through and, even doing this today. 'Cause it's preseason. You didn't have to show up, Josh. We're glad you're doing a show with us.
Yeah. So, but thankfully, like thank you, Maverick schedule, because literally they have been off since then, in between then and now. So we can catch up.
Before we do catch up, I did want to take a minute, and I'm really glad. I think it was Chance in the chat who noted this, because it's actually something that I wanted to bring up. We wanted to wish they were actually, our colleagues at one point, Nick and Isaac, because we shared Nick and Isaac over at Locked On Mavs. They posted their podcast on our site for 2 years. Mm-hmm. The way they do it, WFAA now. We're all friendly. There's not
Nick
a lot.
Started as an MMB staffer before becoming the Locked On host.
Was he?
Yes.
I thought he did that. And it's been a lot. Well, the point is we all work together, and we've been. And like most of Mavs media, pseudo media, whatever you want to call us, all tend to know one another in one way, shape, or form. Nick has managed to really work his ass off and turn Locked On into a full-time job. Like he obviously does Locked On Mavs, but then he does Locked On NBA, and he does a lot of their coordination, like the stuff he does behind the scenes. Like from my understanding, from talking to other Locked On people, Nick is a real like driving force over there. And then Isaac has gotten a job with the Mavericks, and he's just not able to do Locked On full time anymore. And, and Isaac was talking about this, and like, it was really like kind of surprising. 'Cause like we're all friends, but I don't get a chance to listen to their show all the time. But like when Isaac was talked about how they've done it, they basically podcasted together 6 out of the 7 days of the week for 7 years.
Yeah. That Locked On schedule is insane. I don't know.
1,800 shows. And it's, just shout out to them. Yep. Like, I'm not sure who I'm going to be very curious to see Nick, who Nick like works with next, because those two had like what you hear, and this is just like this is a fact in the industry. A lot of people that work together aren't really friends. My favorite basketball podcast for years and years was Matt Moore and Zach Harper. They don't talk to each other anymore, like at all. And they talk to each other every for like 5 years. I know Kevin O'Connor and like Chris Vernon are pretty good friends. Nick and Isaac are like real friends. Like, I think they would choose to spend time together even if they weren't doing Mav stuff and like that sort of thing. I don't know. I think it's really cool. They have a great relationship. They have a great audience. I think we share some of the same audience. We're definitely not for everyone, as people let us know in the comments. But, I admire them a great deal. I looked, kind of looked to them as a measuring stick in a lot of senses, because, I wanted to attempt to do a daily podcast for about a year and a half then I tried and I couldn't fucking do it. So, there's just there's a real level of just kind of respect there and, fondness, and just wanted to tell Isaac best of luck in the new endeavor over with the Mavs, which obviously we'll see because we know all those people in well, but it's wanted to give him a quick shout out before we get on with the show.
Yeah, for sure. And, on a personal note, if anyone's met Isaac before, just, nicest dude.
Easily.
One of the nicest guys I've ever met. One of the things is we don't see each other in person all that often, especially since I don't, when I went to games, you see him more often, but I don't go to games anymore. And then, once the season starts, there's not a lot of time for socializing. So we don't see each other in person that often. Mm-hmm. But he's definitely one of those guys where I could not see him for like 6 months or a year. And then when I see him at an event or a game or something, he's just like, it's like I just saw him yesterday, that kind of guy.
Oh yeah.
Very welcoming guy. And nice. So yeah, all the best to them.
I will miss, I hope he still comes with some of his hot takes because, for every, he and I rival one another for really awful basketball takes related to the Mavericks, because my favorite one, I will never let him live it down, was the JaVale McGee signing will be like one of the best in the league. Like that was the take he had. I love that. So it's like just that kind of like nobody would have said, like it takes balls to say something like that. Love that thing. Anyway, so we're here now. It's funny. The Mavericks lost to Real Madrid. Doyle and I were kind of reeling when we talked about it. I don't think we were too bothered by the loss and inside the fact that I didn't want them to lose, period. I would like them to win a game in the preseason.
Yeah.
But, Meta Robinson wrote this really good piece for us. Just kind of, she's in, I think she's in Denmark. She really sort of put the loss in context. It's like, this is a team with 9 NBA players and really good former NBA players too. And they play team system and they were trying to come back and win. They really, and they did a great job and they executed. I think it I'm a little alarmed in hindsight that Kid and company didn't really try to push the win to win themselves, but what are you going to do? And in the days since, it's been really quiet on the Mavericks front. And I think that as other preseason play that we've witnessed, the Victor Wembanyama of it all, Amen Thompson having himself a game yesterday, there's the absence of Mavericks basketball for me is creating like the lack of narrative, the lack of anything. An existential dread has started to fill that space for me. And
you've been really happy this summer too.
I have been.
You've been happy, Kirk.
And I'm still happy. I'm more like, I don't know how to put and I started to write about it and then I stopped because I have a reputation that is well earned and usually correct for being a negative Nancy. But my thinking it's like, I'm wondering how much the absence of the Mavericks just not playing period is playing into that existential dread, or if there are bigger concerns, which we're all kind of hand waving. What do you think?
It's really tough because I think the last time we talked before, so I guess it was after the second, I don't know, maybe the first, I don't know, whenever the last time we talked, I mentioned about how historically, like, preseason doesn't really matter, but the thing that matters is, like, the one thing that has shown to be a historical trend is if you go winless in the preseason, that usually means you have a bad season, which, like, hey, connect the dots. If you go winless in the preseason, usually that's bad teams go winless in the preseason.
Right.
But the one thing so like the Mavericks being 0-3 and having one more game left and Luka's not going to play in it, like that obviously, raises some alarm bells. They could go 0-4 in the preseason.
I think it's likely.
Yeah, so that's going to raise some alarm bells, but then you have to look at the context, and Kyrie I think might play Friday. We don't know, but he missed 2 preseason games. Luka is going to, for all practicality, miss at least 2. He basically didn't play in Madrid. He's going to miss Friday. So there's that part of it that you can kind of use to hand wave it. Also, Kid has been maybe playing lineups that aren't really going to factor into the regular season right away. Like, I mean, he flat out, he's starting Lively and Prosper because he would rather them get reps and feel like his vets are going to be ready because, once the NBA season starts, there's not as many opportunities for reps. So he wanted to get those guys as much time as possible. So that makes sense. But that's also going to mean you're going to look kind of stinky with two rookies playing a lot of minutes early on, despite the fact that we still think those guys have a lot of promise and have shown some good quality. So there's that to it. So it's hard to parse like what's real and what's not real. The one thing I think that could be real, like the injury thing, like that's the thing that even if you want to ignore a lot of the noise about what they've done in the preseason, I mean, if Luka isn't 100% on day one, that's going to, or if Kyrie's not 100% on day one, like if those two guys aren't ready to go against the Spurs on October 25th, that's going to cause some problems because this whole team is built around those two guys being able to be on the floor, being able to play a lot because the rest of the team is kind of fitting in around those guys. Like they don't have a third star. They don't have a third guy really. They just have a bunch of other really quality role players that are pretty good, but the biggest question mark on the team is they don't know, they might not have the strongest third best player compared to their Western Conference opponents. So if one of your top two are gone and you're raising everyone up the ladder one more rung, it kind of causes a cascade effect that can be troubling. But, we have to wait and see if they're, they think Lucas might be healthy and Kyrie practice fully. So, but that's the actual, like, if I'm worried about anything, it's the health of Kyrie and Luka.
Which, and I said this to Doyle. I've said this online a few times. It was actually the genesis of what I started to write about kind of before I just turned it off. But it's like, if Kyrie isn't playing or if Luka's not playing, this doesn't work.
Right.
And that's literally by design.
Yes.
Like that's it. And that's not a hater statement. That's the whole point. Like the NBA is rough and tumble. You go look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think they're playing right now. They just got a lot of dudes. The Mavericks don't, for as much as we like some of the things they've done, we like what they've done in a vacuum. And I think we all sort of knew that this was a year 2 Luka move that they decided to make in year 6 because they built the team wrong. There was this great Chris Henderson, C Hendo on Twitter, did an interview with Dereck Jones Jr. after practice yesterday. And Chris just must have forgot about the 2019 deal that one of the 8 Donnie Nelson non-deals that fell through because Donnie was so full of shit, where there's reporting on this. Like Mark Stein had all the tweets. I went and found our article where it's like, first the Mavericks were going to get Goran Dragic and Dereck Jones Jr. And then it changed to Dereck Jones Jr. and Kelly Olynyk. And then it just like completely fell through. And in hindsight, that was one of like we weren't very thrilled at the deal at the time, but in hindsight, the fact that they didn't do anything else other than sign, the Kristaps Porzingis and re-sign, it's like they whiffed on so much of their team building over the years that where we are now is more a matter of necessity than desire. But it's the sort of do-over where I feel like they can build. But if their 2 building block pieces aren't going to play, or if they have injury concerns, that's the risk. That's the risk they took. And the funny part is, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this because you actually started talking about this in our Slack yesterday. The national conversation around the Mavs is one of disinterest. It's not disgust, but it's kind of like, I don't like, even Zach Lowe is like, I don't really want to talk about them. They're not interesting to me. But everyone, the general consensus is that the Mavericks are going to hit their under, and their win total right now, at least ESPN's, was 43.5. So people think that the Mavericks are going to hit their under. So basically winning like 42, 41 games. Here's the thing, guys. They had an awful season last year, and they still won 38. Like, there's a real reconciliation.
And they probably would have won 40 if they wanted to.
So what we're talking about is a couple of coin flip games that go a different direction, and the Mavericks are in that plan. We all know this. That's why they had to literally tank. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on sort of like the expectations surrounding this team right now, because I feel like there's just a general like, ooh, what's the net? Like the new shiny thing is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Thunder. It's like the Mavericks are old news. They're not villains, though Luka I think might be a villain, but they're boring to people. And I don't know how to like talk about that.
Well, I mean, the thing that people have to understand is when you finish 11th in the Western Conference, you are no longer a darling to national people, because national coverage, they have to pick and choose their battles. They cannot watch every single game every single night.
Right.
Some guys will, wake up, like I think Zach Lowe will watch some, like, one or two games live at night, and then he'll wake up in the morning and like watch the other games. So some national guys will watch, they will try to watch, but I mean, it's just physically impossible to watch every single team's 82 game regular season all in real time. Like, you can catch up. So you have to pick your battles, pick and choose. And the Mavericks finished 11th last season, so it's on the onus for them to prove that they're a team worth caring about, even with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Like, when you have a bad season, it's not surprising that national pundits are going to maybe not be as interested in you. And especially, the offseason moves they made, I think everyone agrees that they were all, like, they basically had the best offseason they probably could have had, considering, the constraints that they had to build this summer. But at the end of the day, they didn't really add, they didn't add an all-star. Like, Grant Williams is their best acquisition, and he's been a bench player his whole career for the most part. Yeah. Not to say that that's not a good acquisition. We all thought it was great. Right. He's going to be a steal with that contract, all yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, they just kind of did the best they could with the bad hand that they were dealt. So I understand the kind of, maybe, I don't know if it's pessimism, but disinterest from the national media. But I also understand why local fans are like, wait, what's going on? Because, like, it was exciting that they used the draft. They have a lot of new pieces. So I kind of understand the kind of the kind of different yin and yang of it there. But I mean, again, the team, that third, like, they really are the 2020 team all over again. Like, that team, when it was missing Luka or Kristaps, it was tough because, again, they have a lot of depth, but they just don't have high end depth. So it's all about those top two guys playing, and we'll see. So I don't blame the national media for how they feel about it, but I also don't blame local fans for, like, maybe being a little upset about it. It's just kind of the hand. That's kind of how it is.
Yeah, and I have a number of dear friends in my life who are Lakers fans. I don't hold that against them. That's what they were born into. But getting, like, very jealous over, like, the Bucks Boston coverage and talking about how the media is not thinking about the Lakers, blah blah blah, and I, like, which, first of all, gigantic eye roll. But second of all, I said back to him, it's like, I prefer coming into the season with low expectations. High expectations, we've seen it. We watched the Mavericks do it. Expectations suck, okay? Because if you fail to perform to expectations, all everybody does is kick you down. So if there's, like, a little bit of an undercurrent of boredom with the Mavericks, that's fine. I would love to see the Mavericks come out and perform and win some games and get off to a good start, even though I think through the first 30 games of both of Jason Kidd's seasons with the Mavericks, they basically played 500 basketball, so it's pretty unlikely they do, they come out this year. But I don't know. I'm feeling, I like the kind of under the radar element of it, because there's enough. I didn't like the narratives to end the season. I didn't like the way that Luka was held to a completely different standard than superstar Damian Lillard about tanking. And it's like I'd rather people not talk about the Mavericks than hate on them. It's just that's sort of the way I'm thinking about this. We got a couple more things we want to talk about, but before we're gonna kick to a podcast break here where we can insert some ads. Do us a favor and listen to them. That's the one way Josh and I make a little bit of coin off of this. But while we're talking about this, if you could do me a favor, go ahead and hit the like button on this particular stream. That helps. And if you would consider subscribing to the show on YouTube, as you guys may or may not know, we go live after every single game of the NBA season. And sometimes, actually most times, we do 2 live shows. First, we do this sort of show here where we have, we talk about the game that was and what Josh and I took away from it. And then about 30 minutes later, I host a live show where people, where all of our, fellow friends and Mavs fans can come up here and talk basketball with me. One of the things I tend to circle back on is part of the reason that I did this is because I wanted to talk to other Mavs fans. Where I was living for a significant portion of my adult life, I didn't have anybody to talk basketball with. And that's why I do this, because I still want to talk basketball. So please join this, consider subscribing, join the show. We have a lot of fun and we do a lot of content in the season. Also over at Mavs Moneyball. So let's kick to an ad space and then we will be right back.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
All right. Thanks, listeners and viewers, for giving me that little bit of a soliloquy. The next thing that we wanted to talk about was there were two media availabilities the last few days that I latched on to, and I wanted to get Josh's reaction to. The first, friend of the program, Nick Angstad, asked Grant Williams some questions about Dereck Lively. And one of the things that I liked was Grant Williams' pretty much candidness that it is on the veterans to help put Lively in a position to succeed. And frankly, the candid admission that they need Dereck Lively. And we've talked about this all offseason. Of course, the Mavericks need Dereck Lively. But here's the thing about the Dallas Mavericks that I have grown accustomed to over the years. They blow an unimaginable amount of smoke up our asses about what they do and don't need because they're trying to control the narrative. I like this admission of they need Lively to be good. It's a silly thing. Maybe it's just me, but it's pointing to the sky and telling me that the sky's blue versus telling me that it's purple and I just have the wrong kind of glasses in. Did you have any reaction to those comments, or did you even see them? Because I know the past few days have been chaotic for you.
Oh, no, I did see them earlier today. And yeah, it is a little refreshing because what have we been saying? I mean, basically since the draft is we understand the historical precedent of rookies on good teams and how unlikely it is for rookies to contribute to playoff teams right away. But on the other hand, if you look at this Mavericks roster, if they want to get to the places they want to get to, Lively is going to have to contribute in some way or some shape or form. That doesn't necessarily mean he has to be game one, maybe just at some point during the season. He has to do something to help this team win some games, because otherwise the roster doesn't, it looks a lot similar to the roster last season if he's not a major player. Like if it's Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber and insert other big here that are playing most of the big minutes, then you're going to see a lot of same things from last season, not to discount the good things that Dwight Powell does. But Lively's he's an X factor. So it makes sense. And I'm sure they see the things in practice. I mean, he just physically can do things that some of the other bigs on the roster cannot do. Yeah.
He's so big. And I circle back to that when I'm not being a whiner about certain things, because it's like he's out there with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, and from a physical perspective, he looks like he fits or he belongs. And I love that. And they are very bullish on him. He is saying the right things. If he comes out and commits 5 fouls in 20 minutes, okay, you're still playing him 20 minutes. He's not hooked to the bench. I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it seems like, what was the narrative? I felt like a couple of weeks, maybe in summer league, like he was going to start in the G League.
Yeah.
Remember? And now we're
Yeah.
at the point where it's like I feel like he's the starter. Like, unless something changes in the next week. I mean, they are talking about him like he's locked in, like coaches, players like Grant Williams today. Like they're talking about him like he's the starter. So it's either one of two things. He's either left a really good impression and he is, taken to the coaching very well, or maybe things are a little more dire with the rest of the center rotation and they feel like he has to play. But either way, it's pretty surprising to go from, hey, this guy might spend a lot of time in the G League to, oh, he's going to start opening night against Victor Wembanyama. I think that's encouraging in terms of he has to have left an impression on this coaching staff since he's been in Dallas.
Who do they play Friday?
They play Detroit, so you get to see Asur Thompson and
so
Cunningham.
Well, the reason I ask is because he's going to have gone against, at least on an NBA. Well, no, even when they played Real Madrid, they had that 7'3" guy. Every single team he plays has somebody bigger than him. Because like Wiseman is roughly his size, but Wiseman's softer than baby shit. But that's going to be an interesting game because they have a lot of like physical big guys that I'm going to be curious to see how he does if he plays there. And then again, Victor Wembanyama on opening night, like there is no rest for this guy against huge people. And it's when you see all these centers listed out, it's kind of a reminder of this is why the Mavericks decided to go for a big, even though you and I, from a team building perspective, don't really we're a couple of former big men, so it's like we're a little biased, but we don't value bigs and in the team building structure. But I you see this all listed out. I get why they went for it. I'm feeling I'm going to be very bullish on him. I like the honesty because one of the things that has been a hallmark from the Mavericks going back to Carlisle era is just a lot of like obfuscation of very simple things where they try to tell you, oh, we have 6 center, we have a great big man rotation, and then you go through the big men and it's a bunch of guys that nobody else would want, like Willie Cauley-Stein. It's like, come on, what are we doing here? Then there was another, again, also by Nick. Nick asked Tim Hardaway today during practice or after practice, kind of a following up on the question, just the full story, and Nick did like a 3-minute video on this that was very good. Jason Kidd over the summer said that Tim Hardaway was going to be coming off the bench, more than likely that he's going to be coming off the bench. In media day, someone asked him about that, and Tim Hardaway essentially said, that's not a discussion I've had, to which Nick did a follow-up with Tim Hardaway only to say that, no, they've still not had that discussion. And Tim is a professional. Okay, Tim talked about on the JJ Redick podcast 2.5 years ago about how he can kind of do either. And he basically gave that answer again today. What this did, though, was just, and it's so funny because you and I were so vehemently against the kid hiring. And I think since we've just kind of shrugged our shoulders because we know he's not going anywhere. But what this sort of stuff does, where it's very clear that these guys aren't having the simple, like, they're not having conversations they should be having. And it makes the fan base so angry. And I'm just like, I get it, because it's like, as I tweeted today, those of us who work office jobs, it's the equivalent of you having a boss that does not, like, that comes and talks to you, but doesn't talk to you about what you're supposed to be doing. And it's a really strange, it's just a strange thing. And I don't know how to read about it other than the fact that, Tim's a professional. I think Tim can succeed in either role, and Tim's shooting is pretty darn important to the Mavericks.
Yeah, as we kind of saw in the preseason, because I don't think Tim played in the first 2 Abu Dhabi games, and the Mavericks offense looked like dog doo-doo, and then he played in the Real Madrid game, and shockingly, the best I think the Mavericks looked in that game was when he was on the floor. He shot a lot of threes. He loved that shorter 3-point line. That was pretty fun to watch. But yeah, I think it's also giving people some PTSD to Christian Wood, because this is basically how the Christian Wood era started last summer, where kids said he's going to come off the bench, get to training camp. Reporters asked Wood about it. He's like, oh, we never talked about it. And there's kind of this, I mean, it's literally the exact same thing happening again. The only difference is, at least with Tim, he's not on an expiring contract. He's been on the team for a while. So it's a little different. He's more integrated in the locker room, things like that. So I don't have as much, I'm not worried about this being something that maybe affects the locker room compared to something like Christian Wood, because Wood obviously had his reputation coming into Dallas. So we'll see there. But from Tim's point of view, I kind of understand it, because like, think about it from his perspective. Like, he knows that the locked in starters are Kyrie, Luka, Grant, and then it's going to be a big guy. So obviously the last spot is a guard or wing. And he's looking, he looks at how good he is, and he looks at Josh Green and Omax Prosper and Dereck Jones. Like, he absolutely probably believes he's like, I'm better than these guys. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm almost a 18 point per game score. Like, I'm a 15 to 18 point per game scorer. These guys like can't even get to double figures. Like, I'm one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Like, he probably absolutely believes he should be that final perimeter starter next to Luka and Kyrie. And the Mavericks have had a ton of success with him on the floor next to Luka, because Luka kind of unlocks the best of Tim, because Tim is at his best when he is shooting threes and not doing a lot of self-creation or freelancing. And when Luka and Kyrie are on the floor, there's just no room for him to do anything but move and shoot, like spot up shoot. Like when he's coming off the bench and Luka or Kyrie on the floor, that gives him more opportunity to maybe take pull-up twos and maybe drive into some ill-advised shots at the rim, because his 2-point percentage isn't that great, especially last season. But like, the numbers with Luka and Tim on the floor are, since Tim's been here, are pretty great. So like, from his mind, I'm sure he's like, why wouldn't I be the fifth starter or whatever? So I get it. And this Mavericks coaching staff is just going to have to navigate this and hope it doesn't fester into something. I don't know how they're going to go about it, but yeah, that's going to be something to watch, because, also you look at the summer, I mean, they basically signed his replacement in Seth Curry. So, he talked about first day training camp. He talked about like, I didn't even know if I was going to be here. So I think the big thing is going to be, how do the Mavs navigate their guard rotation? Because they've got Luka, Kyrie, Seth, Jaden Hardy, Tim.
Just a lot of bodies.
Yeah. And not all those guys can play. So how do you manage that? And does that mean a trade's coming? Like, that's just going to be something to watch all season until they make a trade that maybe makes things a little bit cleaner from a men's perspective.
I had one person. So this gets into the last sort of thing that I want to talk about. The Mavericks have, I think, 6 full days to basically get Josh Green signed to an extension.
Yeah, October 23rd.
I have advocated for it pretty loudly, oddly enough, even though Josh Green has been a guy I've just disparaged on this show for 3 straight years, because I think that Josh Green is more valuable to the Mavericks than he is another team. Because Josh has a specific set of skills, but I don't think he's ever going to be like a 16 point per game guy. That said, I don't like the way the NBA salary structure has so many people so confused about who's worth what. And I think, if they get a new TV deal, you want to lock a guy in, is sort of where I'm coming from. But I had a guy, I'm trying to see if I can find it in my notifications, but he basically responded back to me today to tell me that he thinks that they're not going to sign him because they want to be able to trade him, have the option to trade him during the season as part of a package. And if you do that, you can't move him for, I think, at least a year, which is a good counter argument. It's the most Maverick is shit way of approaching business, which is how we lost Jalen Brunson. So congratulations to the Mavericks for continuing to do these things. But here it is. It was Ryan Diocampo. Thanks, Ryan, for this. He said, re-signing Josh just complicates his ability to be traded, and locking him into the number he is not likely to overperform just handcuffs him for no reason. My guess is Josh, GHJ, Holmes, and the number 27 first-round pick for Rob Williams and Brogdon or Grant or somebody like that, and that can't happen until December 15th. Not really commenting on the trade because I'm bad at that sort of stuff, but I think like that sounds like Maverick thinking to me. is sort of where I settled with that. And I find myself just at a crossroads of frustration and acceptance, because one of the things that is going to be very difficult for me if what doesn't happen, if the Mavericks don't pan out despite taking steps we wanted them to take this summer, is the fact that like they have marched sort of where they are as a team is almost entirely of their own doing. And so if things don't work, it becomes we have to revisit history, and like nobody likes that. No one likes talking about how you got to here because it's not fun to revisit failures. And I don't know, like the Josh of it all, it shouldn't really matter because he's a 9-point per game scorer who is a guard that's miscast as a wing because he played he is burly. I don't know where I stand on the Josh thing. I find myself sort of second guessing my own column. Well, what do you think?
I just don't understand. I guess I'm confused on how this is like where the stalemate is here. Like, because you don't want him to get to restricted free agency, I don't think, because that just can introduce some problems.
I just don't like
that's a wild, because what if there's a wild card team that like what if the Spurs have a ton of cap room? What if they just decide, hey, we're going to give you $80 million, and then now the Mavericks have to match that, or you just get into a situation where you kind of take the control away, and that's never good. But I'm trying to figure out like where is the standoff coming from? Is Josh asking for more, or the Mavericks trying to lowball him? Because like, let's be real, he is, you look at his body of work, and obviously he's improved tremendously every season, like literally rookie to sophomore to his third season he's gone up every single season. So he's done well. But again, he started from a very low spot. He has not averaged double figures yet in his career. He is still kind of a bit player up until now. Maybe he's going to be the starter on opening night, but first 3 years of his career, he couldn't get off the bench, to occasional bench guy, to occasional starter, occasional bench. There's no way the Josh Green camp can reasonably expect him to be like, are they asking for like $70 or $80 million?
Right.
Because then I understand why the Mavs are like, no,
we just got Grant Williams, who is better for cheaper.
So is that where that's coming from? But that seems pretty preposterous considering where Josh, I can't imagine his team.
Like he was,
where's the leverage position from the Josh Green side of things? Like
where's the money? Yeah.
So I feel like the way this gets done is maybe it gets done in, if we're talking about like what's fair, it needs to be in that like 4 to 50 to 60 range somewhere. Right. Anything more than maybe I understand why the Mavs are, but then but again, if the Green camp is really adamant that they want more and he gets restricted free agency, like that's a problem. The Mavericks are eventually gonna have to get to a point where they need to reach a comfort zone of like, okay, where can we get where we feel comfortable signing something so that we just don't let this thing linger, because they have to get it. So they have to figure it out. They have to get a deal done. That's why that's their job, that they're paid more.
At this point, I don't think they're gonna. I sort of just get the and I don't know why. I have nothing to base this off of. I just think they're gonna let this go into next year and say, go get a deal. Otherwise, we're gonna sign you to like 4 for 44. And maybe that's the play. I have some residual about because I wrote this, and this is crazy when you think about this. Players that the Mavericks have drafted, they signed. These are the guys they have signed to second contracts that they have drafted. So Dwight Powell, Kristaps Porzingis do not count. It is Dirk Nowitzki, Josh Green, Devin Harris, Luka Doncic. That is it since 1999.
Did you get Howard in there?
Yeah. So okay, Dirk, Josh Howard, Devin Harris, Luka Doncic. Oh, yeah. That's it. And that's not abnormal. Like the Knicks went 30 years without signing somebody. It's like we sort of misunderstand this because it's like, oh, you first and second round draft picks, you're going to sign those guys deals. They're going to be on your team. No, there's a lot of player movement. So it's not, the Mavericks aren't alone in this. It's just, I am a guy, my team building perspective that I would do if I were GM is based off of the draft. Like the Golden State Warriors built their dynasty through the draft. Yep. And it's the way the current or previous CBA really pushed towards. And it's in the Mavericks never have done it that way. Like they got Luka and then they tried to skip to the front of the line, which is, I don't blame them for. You get a generational talent, you try to do that sort of thing. But it makes me a little uncomfortable when you see all these, like if the Mavericks do want to be a player in trade markets, okay, it helps to have tradable guys too.
Yeah.
That's how they got Kyrie Irving.
Yeah. And I know some people think like, maybe a player is more desirable when there's less money on his deal. But for a player like Josh, a young player that's growing and developing, he is more desirable on the trade market with a long-term deal because a team can, because he's young and a team can be like, okay, we have him guarantee, like, if they get him signed to an extension, when the Mavericks if the Mavericks offer him in trades, other teams can be like, oh, we can trade for him and we get him cost controlled for 4 years while he develops into whatever projection like model thinks he can be. That's way more valuable than, oh, he's expiring, he's restricted free agent, you're gonna have to negotiate a new contract, like all this. Like other teams don't want to do that. Like they just want to trade for a guy that they don't have to think about, and he can be on their team for 4 years. So that's another incentive to get a deal done. He'll be much more desirable in the trade market.
That's where I sort of, and I didn't tweet back at him today because I just didn't have time, but that was where I disagreed with the guy that was using, we'll use him in a trade. You have to want to keep Josh Green. And like, that's sort of my point where I look around at the young guards in the league, despite Josh being just 21, we as a Mavs fan base sort of horrendously overrate him because we want him to be something more. But he's not. Like, he's very inconsistent. Like, that's okay. He's young. But that's the sort of gamble that you take on your own guys. If you believe in him enough, and maybe the Mavericks don't, because, like, they haven't started him. Yeah. That's like probably the last thing.
Started Justin Holiday like 2 days into Justin Holiday's Mavericks career.
And if that's the case, then move him already. Like, stop with this game. Like,
because we get the whispers from, like, McMahon and other reporters are like, oh, he's like, we won't trade Josh. Like, he's like maybe not untouchable, but he's like on their list of, like, they've turned down offers. Mm-hmm. Tim McMahon has said that they turned down, Clint Capella to trades because Atlanta wanted Josh Green. So do you value him or do you not? So like, right. Shit or get off the pot.
It can't be this kind of game. That is, and I think that might be the last thing that we talked about, or that we could talk about, and then we could go. There's been some sort of discussion about the fact that Dereck Jones Jr. Might start at the 3, which is very interesting because
is that fan speculation, or did that come out of training camp quotes or practice?
Really good. I want to say it was Stein, but I don't want to misquote him and I don't want to look for it. But this was a real thing that was out there for a while. It wasn't
just fan wish casting.
Right. Well, why would you wish cast the guy that a lot of us think is best as a small ball 5 to be the starting 3? Well, and the answer is, I think, is defensive presence. And Dereck Jones Jr., if there's one thing about him, and the Bulls guys will tell you this. Yes, Charlie in the chat says, I think Stein got that from Kidd. That's where I remember reading it too. Is Dereck Jones is an actual good defender. He cannot defend up, meaning he can't defend bigger guys, but he can defend wings. And I wonder if sort of the thought process is if these Mavericks need to get off to a good start of the year, you go and try to actually play some defense. Now, it makes me a little uncomfortable that your minimum signing, your last signing of the offseason, jumps into a starting role, but I'm also not really wholly opposed from it because I think that everyone is probably like the good start thing. I think it's just my guess, but I think that's going to be a narrative because the Mavericks just can't, they're not good enough to be able to play from behind this season. So maybe that's why they start him and they see where it goes, because I do think he gives you a defensive presence that the rest, him and Grant Williams and Dereck Lively, not a bad defensive front line, kind of fun.
Very athletic.
Like not the kind of weird on offense, but like, again, do you care if Luka and Kyrie exist?
Yeah, that's probably the thought process is how do we best maximize Dereck Jones Jr. And a lot of these answers are with these players that don't have offensive games is play them next to Luka and Kyrie because then it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It might matter in high leverage situations. You probably can't get away with it, but when you're playing like 82 games regular season schedule where teams aren't scouting you as hard, you can absolutely get away with Dereck Jones playing in a starting lineup with Luka and Kyrie. The thing that I'm wondering is if he's garnering interest as a starter again, doesn't this take us back to Josh Green and like how much do they value him if the guy that they picked up right before training camp, their last offseason signing, is going to start and not your fourth year forward that you've invested a decent first round pick into in development time and has shown improvements? Like that's another question mark for me. Like if Jones is starting over Green. But another thing might be maybe the Mavericks see how Green plays with Luka and Kyrie last season. Granted, it was a very, very small sample, and they saw how he played without one of Luka or Kyrie. And maybe they feel like he's better coming off the bench because he gets the ball in his hands more and he seems to be more assertive when he's not playing next to Luka and Kyrie. So maybe that's the thought process. But if that's how they feel about those guys going forward, again, that's why we're seeing the stalemate kind of, well, not stalemate, but maybe that's why we're not seeing as much chatter about Green's extension if the Mavericks see him as a bench guy.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Green's camp absolutely believes that he should be a starter at this point in his career. So
which is
the Mavericks, I mean, I think he's shown enough that I absolutely think that that's a fair position. So maybe that's why we haven't seen a deal done, because maybe the Mavericks don't see him as a starter.
I think that's right. Well, is there anything else we want to touch on?
Man, I don't know. I'm excited to kind of watch. I hope Detroit plays people because they've got kind of they've been bad for one of the things about them being bad for like 5 years, like really, really bad for like 5 or 6 years.
They have some incredible draft pick players, guys.
Yes. I want to watch Cade and Asur. Am I saying his first name right? Asar. I want to see him and Cade and even like the ghost of Marvin of Bagley.
Jaden Ivey exists. The fastest freaking dude. My goodness.
They've got a fun crop of guys. I don't know if they're going to be any good, but they've got a fun group of
young blue chippers. Yeah, I don't know, because like the final preseason game is always weird.
It's weird, yeah.
Nobody wants to get hurt. It's kind of this happens in football too. Luka's not playing. Luka could probably play. Luka could probably play right now. Like he's just not. I do. I mean,
because not anything to mess around with.
I mean, did I share with you my hot take?
Not yet.
This is a complete conspiracy theory that is based on nothing and is a joke. I will repeat, this is a joke. But what if the Mavericks are making sure Luka hurts his left calf so he stops taking step back threes? Because it's the same calf he hurt against the Spurs two playoffs ago, and so it's not entirely unsurprising. That's his kind of load and explode leg. So yeah, they're being cautious. I do think he could play because Luka is never not going to be hurt. I'm sorry, he's just never not going to be hurt in some way, shape, or form. It's can he play? And I think the answer is yeah, he probably can, but they don't want to make it worse. So why would you?
Okay.
So that's just my take. I could be wrong. We'll see where we go from here. So we'll probably record Friday night, probably a short podcast, and I'll probably do a live show just to get it under my belt. And then the Mavericks play 8 days from today. Regular season kicks off. San Antonio Spurs. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, guys, head over to MavsMoneyball.com, where the wonderful staff members have been churning out content like nobody's business. I have a panic attack every preseason where I'm like, how are we going to do the thing? Because we have like post quotas we're supposed to hit. And then lo and behold, everybody shows up. My favorite weird series, and they're not getting read because I see the page views, but that's fine, is this win totals columns that are kind of guys that are more interested in gambling have been turning in, where it's just basically an excuse to write about the other team. It's like another team season preview. And some of them are pretty fun, man, where it's like you look at it and it's like, gosh, like Portland's like win total, they're just going to be really like a really interesting team. There's just all sorts of stuff out there on our site. That like some of the stuff that we wrote over the weekend. We have one writer, his name's Clint. Clint never writes. He drives me crazy with this because he is in his own head all the time.
Because every time he writes, it's really funny.
And it's really funny. And he wrote this great column that I ran. He wrote it like 2 weeks ago, but I saved it for closer to the season because it was that kind of thing. And I'm trying to, where is it here? I'm scrolling through the site. He wrote a piece. It's called Looking Forward to and Dreading the Dallas Mavericks Season. And it's such a great summary of being a fan at this stage in kind of the Mavs team building process. There's some really good stuff on our site, guys. If you head over, if you make it part of your daily routine, you're going to find stuff every day. We aren't quite as, there's Dalton's site, dallasbasketball.com. They will, Grant Afseth, I think does this full time. So like, they're a little better about like the daily, like even down to the minutia posts. We try, but sometimes we just don't get to it. But, there's going to be something up unique every day. We're going to be really, I'm sort of leveraging, we have this company Slack company. We're not a company, we're a damn fan site. But we have these conversations all day, and I've been berating our staff because I'm like, guys, stop writing in here and write for the website that we run. And lo and behold, we have like a 1,500 word conversation about centers that I thought was great from Matthew and from Brent and from David Trink. We're gonna have all sorts of stuff up on the site. Just consider popping over there, reading stuff during your lunch hour. Sign up, leave comments, love that sort of thing. And while I'm shilling, go ahead and once again subscribe to our to the podcast feed and to the YouTube channel. So, do you have anything else before we go?
No, I think that's it. It's fun to get back in the grind.
It is fun to get back in the grind. I'm gonna go play. I'm gonna go play more Breath of the Wild. It is 2017 in my head. I had to put down Starfield. I was like, I got to pick one, and I'm going to go with Breath of the Wild for right now. So.
You're going to get, this is Starfield. I feel like that's the one where it's like, I got to stop playing or I'm going to lose my job or get kicked out of the house.
Both of them really, because it's like Breath of the Wild and those Zelda games are incredible, but it's it's a great, I don't know. It's with, obviously the TV strike was very, very bad for everybody in Hollywood, but there's not anything I want to watch on TV right now. So it's like basketball season is coming at a great time. So I'm like, hey, stuff to watch. And my wife, I can just tell her, she's just rolling her eyes. Okay. Kirk Henderson, Josh Bowe, Pod Maverick. Thanks so much for spending part of your night with us. We will be back Friday night and we will talk with you guys soon. Go Mavs.